My son was in the ICU after an accident when my mom called and said, "Tomorrow is your sister's birthday. Help get things ready." I said, "I can't. It's not the right time." She replied, "If you don't come, I'll cut you off." I hung up and blocked her number. On the day of the party, my son woke up and said, "Mom, I got hurt because Grandma." I transferred the $8,600 back into my account and canceled every flight I'd booked for her. She said I wasn't invited to the wedding, so I made sure she had nowhere to go afterward. I didn't yell. I didn't explain. I just hit cancel and walked away. A few hours later, I was sitting in the ICU watching my son fight for his life. That's when she called again, like none of it had happened. The hospital smelled like bleach and quiet panic. My son lay unconscious, wrapped in wires and tubes, his small chest rising slowly under the weight of machines. I hadn't slept. I hadn't eaten. I just sat there staring at the monitor, praying for movement. I whispered his name, hoping he'd stir. He didn't. Then my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. It was a number I didn't recognize. I answered, thinking maybe it was the hospital or a friend checking in. But it was her. My mother. Her voice was chipper, like she was calling to chat about decorations. "Tomorrow is your sister's birthday," she said. "We're doing a garden party. I need you to help with the setup." I blinked, stunned. "He's in the ICU," I said. "I'm not leaving." She didn't ask what happened. Didn't ask how he was. Just repeated herself. "You need to help. It's her big day." I felt my stomach twist. "I'm not coming. I'm staying with my son." Her tone sharpened. "If you don't show up, I'll cut you off. Don't expect anything from me again." I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I hung up and blocked her number. My hands were shaking, but my mind was clear. I chose my son. I chose peace. I chose to stop chasing her approval. The hours dragged on. Nurses came and went, adjusting tubes, checking vitals. I stayed. I read to him from his favorite book, even though he couldn't hear me. I whispered stories from when he was little. How he used to hide under the dining table during thunderstorms, how he once tried to make pancakes with ketchup because he thought it was red syrup. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stayed. Around midnight, I checked my phone again. No messages. No missed calls. Not from my sister. Not from anyone. The silence was loud. I realized how little I mattered to them when I wasn't useful. I wasn't the party planner. I wasn't the errand runner. I was just inconvenient. I leaned back in the stiff hospital chair, watching the monitor. His heartbeat was steady. That was enough. A nurse named Carla came in with a blanket. "You've been here all day," she said gently. "You should rest." I shook my head. "I'll rest when he wakes up." She smiled, placed the blanket over my shoulders, and left. That small act of kindness felt like a lifeline. I thought about my mother. About all the times she'd made me choose between her approval and my own peace. She'd always dangled love like a prize. Conditional, transactional. Help with the party, get a smile. Say no, get silence. I remembered my sister's graduation. I'd missed my son's school play to help decorate. My mother had praised me for being reliable. My son had cried that night. I'd promised never to miss anything again. Now here I was, keeping that promise. The next morning, I watched the sun rise through the narrow hospital window. My son still hadn't moved. I brushed his hair back gently. "I'm here," I whispered. "I'm not going anywhere." A janitor passed by, humming softly. The world outside kept turning. Somewhere, balloons were being inflated. Tables were being set. My mother was probably telling guests how ungrateful I was. I didn't care. I ordered coffee from the hospital cafeteria. Tasted burnt, but it kept me awake. I sat back down, opened my son's sketchbook from his backpack. He'd drawn a picture of our dog, Max, with a superhero cape. I smiled. Even in his art, he believed in saving others. Thought about calling my sister, just to see if she cared. But I didn't. I knew what she'd say. "It's just one day. You could have come." They never understood. They never tried. Around noon, a volunteer came by with a tray of sandwiches. "You've been here a while," she said kindly. "Take one." I nodded, took a sandwich, and thanked her. I ate slowly, watching my son's chest rise and fall. That rhythm was my anchor. I checked my phone again. Still nothing. I wasn't surprised anymore. I remembered a moment from years ago. My son had fallen off his bike, scraped his knee badly. My mother had said, "He's fine. Don't baby him." I'd carried him inside, cleaned the wound, held him while he cried. That was the first time I realized how different our definitions of love were. She loved with conditions. I loved without them. That night I read to him again. His favorite chapter, the one with the dragon who learns to be brave. I paused between sentences, hoping for a twitch, a blink, anything. Nothing. I whispered, "You're my dragon. You're brave. You'll come back to me." I didn't know if he heard, but I believed he would. I leaned my head against the bed, closed my eyes for a moment. Just a moment. When I opened them, the monitor beeped steadily. His fingers hadn't moved. But I stayed. I stayed because that's what mothers do. I didn't need a party. I didn't need approval. I needed my son to wake up. And I'd wait as long as it took. I stared at the wall, still holding his phone in my hand. The message was short, but it said everything. "Just go quickly. It's important." I read it again, then again, hoping I'd misunderstood. But I hadn't. My son had been sent out, alone, tired and unwell, because she needed something for a party. That was the truth. And it was uglier than I ever imagined. I turned back to him. His eyes were closed again, but his breathing was steady. I sat beside him, brushing his hair back gently. My fingers trembled. I didn't want him to see me like that. I didn't want him to feel responsible for the storm that was building inside me. But I couldn't stop the questions. Why didn't she ask me? Why didn't she wait? Why did she think her celebration mattered more than his safety? A nurse walked in to check his vitals. He smiled at me, then paused. "He's doing better," she said softly. "You should try to rest." I nodded, but I didn't move. Resting felt impossible. My mind was racing, replaying every moment of that day. I remembered the silence from my family. The absence of concern. The way no one had asked how he was. They were too busy hanging streamers and slicing cake. I looked at the clock. It was nearly 3 p.m. By now the party would be in full swing. Laughter, music, photos. I imagined my mother standing in the center, proud of her decorations, telling guests how hard she'd worked. I wondered if she'd even mentioned the accident. Or if she'd brushed it off like an inconvenience. My son stirred. I leaned in. His eyes opened slowly and he looked at me with a mix of confusion and fear. "Mom," he whispered again, voice raspy. "I'm here," I said, squeezing his hand. "You're safe." He blinked, then frowned. Did I mess everything up? I felt my chest tighten. "No, sweetheart. You didn't mess up anything." He looked down. "Grandma said it was important. I didn't want to go, but she said I had to." I swallowed hard. "What did she ask you to get?" He hesitated. "She wanted me to pick up the cupcakes. Said the bakery messed up the delivery." I closed my eyes for a moment. Cupcakes. That's what it was. Not medicine. Not something urgent. Just dessert. "She said it was close," he added. I told her I felt dizzy, but she said I'd be fine. I nodded slowly, trying to keep my voice steady. "You should have never been out there." He looked at me, eyes wide. "Is she mad?" I shook my head. "You didn't do anything wrong." He didn't speak after that. He just stared at the ceiling, quiet. I could see the guilt in his face, the way he was trying to make sense of it all. I wanted to take it away. I wanted to erase the memory of that message, that errand, that street. A few hours later, a nurse came in with a small tray of food. "He should try to eat something," she said gently. I helped him sit up slowly. He winced but didn't complain. I fed him spoonfuls of soup, watching him closely. Every movement felt fragile. Every blink, every breath, a reminder of how close I'd come to losing him. After he finished, he leaned back and whispered, "Will Grandma come?" I hesitated. "I don't think so." He nodded, then looked away. "She said I was her favorite." I didn't know what to say. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell him that favorites don't send you into traffic for cupcakes. But I didn't. I just sat there holding his hand. Later that evening, a nurse named Jordan came in to adjust the 4. He glanced at the chart, then looked at me. "He's lucky," he said. "It could have been worse." I nodded. "I know." He paused. "You holding up okay?" I shrugged. "Trying." He gave a small smile. "You're doing better than most." After he left, I stood by the window watching the sky darken. The city lights flickered on one by one. I thought about my mother again. About the way she'd smiled when she told me I wasn't invited. About the way she'd dismissed my son's accident like it was a scheduling conflict. I pulled out my phone and opened the message again. Just go quickly. It's important. I stared at it, then took a screenshot. I didn't know what I'd do with it yet. But I knew I couldn't ignore it. My son fell asleep again, his breathing soft and steady. I sat beside him watching the monitor. I didn't feel tired. I felt wired, like every nerve in my body was on alert. Around midnight I stepped out into the hallway. I needed a moment alone. I walked to the vending machine and bought a bottle of water. As I turned to head back, I saw a familiar face. Mrs. Patel, a neighbor from down the street. She looked surprised to see me. "Oh my goodness," she said. "I heard about the accident. Is he okay?" I nodded. "He's recovering." She frowned. "I saw your mother earlier. She didn't mention anything." I wasn't surprised. She had a party to host. Mrs. Patel looked uncomfortable. "She said you were being dramatic." I smiled tightly. "That sounds about right." She hesitated. "If you need anything, let me know." "Thank you," I said and walked away. Back in the room, I sat beside my son again. I looked at his face, peaceful in sleep. I thought about everything he'd been through. Everything I'd been through. And I knew something had shifted. Something permanent. I couldn't pretend anymore. I couldn't excuse it. I couldn't protect her from the truth. She'd crossed a line. And I wasn't going to let her step back over it. I sat by the window watching my son sleep. The city lights blinked outside like distant stars. But inside the room, everything was still. My phone lay face down on the table. I didn't need to look at it again. Her reply was already burned into my mind. "You're being dramatic." That was all she had to say. No remorse. No acknowledgement. Just the same old dismissal wrapped in a new layer of cruelty. I stood up, walked to the sink and splashed cold water on my face. My reflection stared back. Tired eyes, clenched jaw. A woman who'd finally stopped waiting for someone else to change. I dried my hands slowly, then grabbed my keys. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I didn't need permission. I needed closure. Her house was quiet when I arrived. The party was over, but the remnants lingered. Balloons sagging against the porch rail. A banner still fluttering in the breeze. I walked up the steps and knocked. She opened the door, wearing a silk robe and a surprised expression. "You're here," she said, as if I'd come to apologize. "I need to talk," I replied, stepping inside. The living room was still dressed for celebration. Empty glasses on the coffee table, a half-eaten cake on the counter. My sister's purse sat on the armchair, her phone charging nearby. I stood in the center of it all, holding my son's phone in one hand. "He woke up," I said. "He remembers everything." She crossed her arms. "He's confused. He just came out of sedation." I showed her the message. "You told him to go. You knew he wasn't feeling well." She glanced at the screen, then shrugged. "He's exaggerating." I stared at her. "He could have died." She didn't flinch. "He didn't." That was it. No apology. No guilt. Just a wall of indifference. I felt something shift inside me. Not rage, not sadness, but a kind of finality. The door had closed. And I wasn't going to knock again. "I'm done," I said quietly. She raised an eyebrow. "With what?" "With this. With you. With pretending this is normal." She scoffed. "You're overreacting." I turned to leave. My sister walked in from the hallway, phone in hand. "You ruined the party," she said, not even looking at me. Mom was heartbroken. I paused. "Do you care that my son was in the ICU?" She rolled her eyes. "It was an accident." I nodded slowly. "Right. An accident." I walked out without another word. The air outside felt colder than before, but cleaner. I got in my car and drove home, hands steady on the wheel. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just let go. The next morning I started packing. Not everything, just what mattered. I found a small apartment near the hospital. It wasn't fancy, but it was quiet. Peaceful. I changed my number. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I just left. My son asked questions at first. "Are we moving forever? Will Grandma visit?" I answered gently. "We're starting fresh. We're going to be okay." He didn't ask again. The new place had sunlight in the mornings and silence at night. I hung his drawings on the fridge. I made pancakes with real syrup. I read to him every evening even when he was too tired to listen. We healed slowly. Weeks passed. Then months. I didn't hear from them. No calls. No texts. No apologies. Just silence. And for the first time I welcomed it. One afternoon I checked the mailbox and found a letter. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting. I opened it, hands steady. It wasn't an apology. It was a request. Come back. Let's forget everything. Family is family. I stared at the paper. Then I tore it in half and dropped it in the trash. That evening my son laughed while watching cartoons. I sat beside him, brushing his hair back. He looked up and smiled. I like it here, he said. I do too, I replied. We didn't need decorations. We didn't need approval. We had each other. And that was enough. Later that night I lit a candle and sat by the window. I thought about everything I'd walked away from. And I didn't feel regret. I felt relief. I chose my son. I chose myself. And for the first time in years I felt free.